Good evening, BookTube. I decided I would do my Friday reads because it's only 8:13 at night here in West Michigan on May the 18th. It just started raining. I don't watch TV at night and I'm kind of a little burnt out. I've been reading, see, that's why I do Friday reads. So what have I been reading? Well, I was looking at my diary since Wednesday, because I think I said it was 3 days since I made a video. I ended today in my 2018 diary, page 384. I should hit page 400 this month. And so what have I been reading? Well, I've been reading in the morning still, and I plan to read this during the weekend. Nicaea and Its Legacy, An Approach to 4th Century Trinitarian Theology by Louis Ayres. This is pretty heavy going. Like I have to start chapter 3 tomorrow morning. Theological Tractatories in Early 4th Century, Part 2. Marcellian Theology, Theologians of the Undivided Moad. I like reading this kind of stuff. You can read it and then you reread it and then you think about it. And I have books I can look up this stuff, and I just like reading things that are challenging. So I've been reading that in the mornings. And then I also read in the mornings Introducing Medieval Biblical Interpretation, Senses of Scripture, and Pre-Modern Exegesis. Now what I do is that one morning I'll read this. Like I read this one this morning, which is today is a Friday, and on Thursday morning I read this one. So I kind of alternate. One morning I'll read one book and then I'll read another book. And I slowly been reading. I read parts of this. This is kind of, you read this kind of it's kind of like meditation. You can read a page and just kind of meditate upon it, think about it. So I've been reading that. This is John, interpreted by early Christian medieval commentators. And this Introducing Medieval Biblical Interpretation, The Senses of Scripture and Pre-Modern Exegesis is by Ian Christopher Levy. So I read these in the mornings usually. Now remember, in the mornings I write in my diary. I watch videos in BookTube. I sometimes look at the morning newspaper. I talk to my wife when she gets home from work. My wife usually gets home from work around 8:30, 8:40. She goes to bed around 9:30. And so in the mornings I read and I write and I talk to my wife. I might look at the newspaper. Sometimes in the morning, late mornings, I might go to local thrift stores or do errands. And then in the afternoons, I've been reading. I was on BookTube the other day, and I came across this fellow who's, from what I gather, teaches on college level literature. And he's made a lot of videos, but what he does, he has lectures 1, 2, 3, and he goes through different books, novels. And what he did a whole series on James Joyce, Ulysses, and William Gaddis on J.R. And then I noticed the other day that he was going to start doing a series of lectures looking at John Barth's Giles Goat-Boy by John Barth. And I've been wanting to reread this for years. I've collected almost all of John Barth's writings. He was one of the, I remember when I was really young, I read a novel by John Barth, and ever since then I've been kind of fascinated with his writings. And so a number of years ago, when I I stopped working around 2007. As I mentioned in previous videos, past videos, that I started collecting books that I remember when I was really young, like in my 20s, really early 20s, when I was in high school and college, junior college in Contra Costa County there in California, Richmond, San Pablo. And I remember I read a novel by John Barth, which I can't remember right now what it was. And so when I start collecting used books and going to used book sales and thrift stores, I've always been looking for John Barth. Anyway, so when I found out that this guy in BookTube was going to start reading through Giles Goat-Boy by John Barth, I got it out, and that's what I've been reading for the last 3 days. I've read 167 pages. It is over... How many pages in this thing? 766. So I've been reading this pretty steadily. And then I've been reading off and on No Immediate Danger, Volume 1 of Carbon Ideologies by William T. Goldman. This is kind of slow going too, but I've read 111 pages out of that last couple of days. And yesterday, one of the thrift store books I found is that, these books are kind of heavy, Goldman and John Barth, and so kind of something more relaxing is I found at a Salvation Army thrift store, reading Jackie, autobiography and books by William Cohn. This is on Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. It says here, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis never wrote a memoir, but she told her life story and revealed herself in intimate ways through the nearly 100 books she brought into print during the last 2 decades of her life as an editor at Viking and at Doubleday. Based on archives and interviews with Jackie's authors, colleagues, and friends, reading Jackie mines the significant period of her life to reveal both the serious and mischievous woman underneath the glamorous public image. Though Jackie had a reputation for avoiding publicity, she willingly courted controversy in her books. She was the first editor to commission a commercially successful book telling the story of Thomas Jefferson's relationship with his female slave. Her publication of Genzi Kirtland's attack on dance icon George Banchin caused another storm. Jackie rarely spoke of her personal life, but many of her books ran parallel to and echoed and emerged from her own experience. She was the editor behind bestsellers on the assassinations of Tsar Nicholas II and John Lennon. Another book, she paid tribute to the allure of Marilyn Monroe and Maria Callas. Her other projects reflected her wide-ranging interests: journeys to Egypt and India, the mysteries of female beauty, the injustice of media exploitation, and celebrations of creative minds from photographers, art historians to designers at Tiffany and Company. Anyway, I've always been I've known about Jackie Kennedy Onassis being an editor I've read about Truman Capote was a friend of hers, and she when Truman Capote was going through really dark times, she was really a close friend of his, and so I knew about that, but never really knew much about her life as an editor for first Viking, and then she did editor for Viking for 2 years, and then I think for 10 years she was an editor for Doubleday. So anyway, I just kind of like reading about this, reading about what books she likes and about things like that. So I got that out to something to relax my mind. So that's my Friday reads. I do got a book coming in the mail. I mentioned that postmodern classic, Women and Men by James McElroy. Hasn't come yet. I was going to show you my thrift store books and the books I got at the Book Nook, but I might go to thrift stores tomorrow and get more books. So maybe tomorrow night I'll show the thrift store haul. And yeah, so that's what I'm planning to read this weekend, what I have been reading. I was looking at Goodreads. There's some really good reviews on Giles Goat-Boy and John Barth. I've read some really good reviews of this book there. So check those out. I recommend that. And I'll put down the link to these lectures this guy is going to give on Giles Goat-Boy by John Barth. I'll put down his BookTube site if you're interested in looking at those lectures. You know, he did Ulysses, Gaddis on JR, and some other books. So that's it. I'll download this video. I just downloaded the video on reading through the Gospel of Mark, and I'll download this one tonight. And that's it. Like I said, I've been enjoying Nicaea and its legacy. It's kind of a mind blower. But I like books like that. I like books that kind of stretch my mind. And I've read a lot of stuff on patristic theology, Christology, and all that. And I've read a lot of books on medieval exegesis. And this is a good book for, like, you know, this kind of book you just want to read in the morning for like meditation, something to contemplate as you're waiting out your little life on this earth. So I'll sign off. I hope you had a good week and you have a good weekend. And until next time, bye.